Today we continue our talk on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now, the benefit of the practice of mindfulness is shown by the words removing covetousness and grief in the world. So this is the benefit of the practice. So when a yogi practices mindfulness, and he is able to remove covetousness and grief, or he is able to prevent covetousness and grief from arising in his mind. With regard to removing, the commentaries mentioned 3 kinds of removing. Now, the first kind we will call momentary removing, and the second temporary removing, and the third total removing. Momentary removing means removing just at the moment when the mindfulness is present. Now this removing is called momentary removing because it can remove only at the moment when the mindfulness is arising. Now, suppose there is darkness, and then you turn on the switch and there is light. So, the moment there is light, darkness is dispelled. But the moment you turn off the switch again, the darkness comes back. So in the same way, when the removing is just for a moment, like when you are mindful, the mental hindrances cannot arise, but when you are not mindful, or when there is no mindfulness in your mind, the mental defilements come back. So such removing, by actually substituting the mental defilements with some wholesome mental states, is called momentary removing. The second kind of removing, temporary removing, is preventing the mental defilements from arising for some time or for a longer period of time, longer than a moment. Now when let us say there is a pond, and in the water there are water plants. Now a buffalo would wade through the water and through the water plants. So when the buffalo goes through the water, the water plants are divided, and they will not come back together again for some time. Only after some time they will come back slowly and meet together. So in the same way, the temporary abandonment is abandonment for some time, so that the mental defilements will not come back again, say, for some time. The third kind of removing is total removing. Total removing means removing the mental defilements once and for all, so that they do not arise in the mind of a yogi again or anymore. The first kind of removing a yogi achieves when he practices mindfulness or vipassana meditation. Now, when he practices mindfulness or vipassana meditation, he makes effort and he tries to be mindful of the object, and as the mindfulness grows in strength, he begins to see the objects clearly, and he begins to see the objects one after another coming and going, and also he begins to see objects arising and disappearing, and so he knows that the objects are impermanent and suffering in the sense that they are afflicted by arising and disappearing, and he also knows that there is no control over these objects arising and disappearing, and also there is no substance in it. So when he sees in this way, he is preventing the mental defilements from arising at that moment. Or when he is seeing in this way, mental defilements do not get chance to arise in his mind. So while he is practicing mindfulness and while he experiences the clear comprehension, he is said to be removing the mental defilements momentarily. So at every moment of mindfulness practice, a yogi is achieving this first kind of removal of mental defilements moment by moment. But as soon as a yogi stops the practice of mindfulness, these mental defilements will get chance to arise in his mind again. The second kind of removal a yogi achieves when he gets jhana. Now, jhana is the higher state of consciousness, and with jhana, these mental defilements can be say, pushed away for some period of time. The mental defilements removed by a jhana experience may not come back to the yogi for some time. The third kind of removal, total removal, is achieved when a yogi reaches enlightenment. Now, at the moment of enlightenment, as I said before, a type of consciousness called path consciousness arises. And that path consciousness takes nibbana as object, and it removes or eradicates mental defilements. Now there are 4 stages of enlightenment, and at the first stage some mental defilements are eradicated, and at the second stage the remaining mental defilements are made weaker, and at the third stage some more mental defilements are eradicated or removed, and at the fourth stage all the remaining mental defilements are eradicated. So once eradicated, these mental defilements will not arise again in that person. So that removal is called the total removal. So when a yogi practices vipassana meditation, he achieves momentary removal of mental defilements. And when a yogi gains jhana, he achieves the temporary removing and when he gains enlightenment, he achieves the total removing. Now Mahasi Sayadaw explained here that during the practice of vipassana meditation, the temporary removal can be experienced. So he explained in this way. First, a yogi practices mindfulness on objects, and then his mindfulness becomes stronger, and he gains good samadhi, and he begins to see the true nature of things. That is, he begins to see the impermanent nature, suffering nature, and non-soul nature of things. So when he sees the objects clearly in this way, he is said to be achieving momentary removal of mental defilements. Now when he has gained experience in achieving momentary removal, his mind will become so refined, his samadhi, his concentration so strong that even if he is not mindful of an object, the mental defilements do not arise on these objects. Normally, if a yogi does not practice mindfulness on an object, then the mental defilements will arise regarding that object. But now this yogi has gained so much experience in momentary removal that even if he does not practice mindfulness on an object, no mental defilements will arise in him. Sometimes, even if he stopped meditating, his mind is so pure that no mental defilements will arise in his mind. So a yogi may think that I have eradicated mental defilements, or no gross mental defilements can arise in my mind now. So that the ability to prevent mental defilements from arising even when they are not made the object of mindfulness is what we call temporary abandonment or temporary removal in the practice of vipassana. Again, please note that removing here means not giving the mental defilements chance to arise. And that is achieved when a yogi is mindful and when he clearly comprehends the objects. So, being mindful and clearly comprehending, a yogi is said to be removing the mental defilements. So that means he doesn't have to make special effort to remove mental defilements. But when he is mindful of the object, when he comprehends the object clearly, that means when he sees the true nature of things, then he is at the same time said to be removing the mental defilements. And the words "in the world" should be understood according to where they are mentioned. So in the number one sentence, in the world means in the body. And in number 2 sentence, in the world means in the feelings. In number 3 sentence, in the world means in the consciousness. And in number 4 sentence, in the world means in the Dhamma objects. So in number 1 sentence, Buddha said, a bhikkhu dwells contemplating the body in the body. So the word body is repeated. And that is for the observation to be precise. So the commentary explains that contemplating or observing the body in the body means observing the body in the body and not observing the feeling in the body, consciousness in the body, and Dhamma objects in the body. So it is to show the precision of observation that the word body is mentioned twice. In this sentence also, the word body is to be understood according to the context. Now, in the discourse on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the body contemplation is described in 14 different ways. The first section is the mindfulness of breathing. Now, the second is the mindfulness of the postures of the body. And the third is called the section on clear comprehension, that is mindfulness of smaller activities like going forward, going back, stretching, bending, and so on. And then there is a section on repulsiveness of the body, or 32 parts of the body. And then there is a section on the 4 material elements. And next there is a section on, 9 sections on cemetery contemplations. So altogether there are 14 kinds of contemplation of the body. And so regarding the first section, which is a section on breathing, the body means breathing. Now in the second section, where the postures of the body are mentioned, then the postures of the body are called body, and so on. So body may mean sometimes the whole body, but sometimes just the breathing in and breathing out, or say stepping forward, going back, and so on. So when you are practicing mindfulness of breathing in and out, then you are doing the contemplation on the body. And when you are mindful of the postures, sitting, standing, walking, and lying down, you are practicing contemplation on the body. And when you are mindful of going forward, going back, stretching, bending, eating, and so on, you are practicing contemplation in the body. So there are altogether 14 kinds of contemplation of the body taught in this discourse. Now the last 9 contemplations of the body are called symmetry contemplations. Actually, that is the contemplation on the different conditions of the dead body. So first it becomes swollen or festered, and then there are other conditions of the dead body until it is reduced to bones and powder. So the symmetry contemplations mean contemplation on the conditions of the dead body, say after the person is dead. Now, when you are mindful of the rising and falling movements of the abdomen, you are doing the contemplation on the body, that is mindfulness of the mindfulness of the air element. Now, you all know that there are 4 material elements: the element of earth, element of water, element of fire, and element of air. Among these 4, the rising and falling movements belong to the air element, because they are actually caused by the breathing in and out, and so they are called air element. And air element has the characteristic of extending, and it has the function of moving. So when you concentrate not on the abdomen actually, but on the movements, then you are concentrating on the air element, on the function of air element. So when you practice mindfulness of the rising and falling of the movement, you are actually practicing the mindfulness of the 4 elements, here mindfulness of the air element. Now the second contemplation of feelings. Feeling is a mental state. Whenever we experience an object, whenever we see an object, or we hear an object, we smell an object, and so on, there is the mental state feeling arising along with the consciousness. So the mental state feeling has the characteristic of experiencing or enjoying the taste of the object. So please note that feeling here is a mental state. But whenever we talk about feeling, our minds always go to the physical thing. Say, when you say pain, then we always go to the material thing that is called pain. And when we are mindful of pain, actually we are mindful of the feeling of that pain. Pain is not mental state. Pain is a physical state. But this contemplation on the feeling is called mental contemplation. So contemplation of feeling is the contemplation of a mental state which is called feeling. And that arises in our mind, not in the physical body. But it is so associated with, so connected with the sensations in the body that in practice we just take these two as one. So when we say, when you have pain, concentrate on the pain and be mindful of it, and that means concentrate on the experience in your mind of that sensation and not that sensation actually. So the sensation, I mean something that is in the body. Now when the material properties in the body are in good state, doing fine, then we don't feel any pain. But when we feel pain, that means the material properties in the body have become deteriorated or they have changed. So that is what we call pain or sensation. And the experience of that pain in our mind, experience in our mind of that pain is what we call feeling. So contemplation on feeling is a mental contemplation or contemplation of a mental object and not of the physical object. Basically, there are three kinds of feelings: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And each of these three can be worldly and unworldly. So worldly feeling means feelings you experience when you are doing worldly things, when you are enjoying good things and so on. And unworldly feeling means the feelings that you experience when you are doing meritorious deed, when you are practicing meditation and so on. So with the three basic feelings, we say that there are 9 kinds of feeling, and there are 9 kinds of feeling taught in the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. And whatever feeling there is, we are to be mindful of that feeling. So that is why when there is a feeling of pain, we try to be mindful, saying pain, pain, pain. Or when there is stiffness, then we try to be mindful of that stiffness, saying stiffness, 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 and so on. Actually, whatever feeling there is, whether it is a pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling or a neutral feeling, we are to be mindful of that feeling. Because if we do not practice mindfulness on feeling, we may have wrong notions of the feeling. That feeling lasts for some time, that feeling is good, and so on. So in order to see the true nature of feeling, we have to be mindful of the feeling. And contemplation on feeling is not to get rid of these feelings. Now, when there is pain, you are instructed to be mindful of that pain, or to make mental notes as pain, 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 and so on. And many yogis think that it is to get rid of that pain that you have to be mindful of it, saying pain, pain, pain. But what the Buddha taught is different. So Buddha said, for the full understanding of these 3 kinds of feelings, you practice the foundations of mindfulness. So when there is feeling and you try to be mindful of that feeling, that means you are trying to see the true nature of that feeling. You are trying to see what feeling is, and you are trying to see that that feeling arises and disappears, and so that feeling is impermanent, and so on. So it is in order to understand fully in this way that you have to be mindful of feelings, not to get rid of pain or some unpleasant sensations. So when you practice feeling contemplation, you make effort and you try to be mindful, and you get concentration, and you see the feelings clearly, or you comprehend the feeling clearly. So when you are mindful of the feeling, when you are clearly comprehending the feeling, you are actually removing mental defilements regarding that feeling. When the feeling is good, covetousness or craving can arise. So when you have a good feeling, you want it to last for a long time, and you are attached to it. And when the feeling is painful, then you have what is called grief. You have ill will or you have anger. That is, if you do not practice mindfulness. So when you practice mindfulness, then they will not get chance to arise in your mind. Now, even when the feeling is bad or unpleasant, craving can arise. Not with regard to that unpleasant feeling, but when there is an unpleasant feeling, you long for a pleasant feeling. You want it to go away and you want to have the pleasant feeling arise in you. So even when the feeling is unpleasant, the attachment or craving can arise. That is, if you do not practice mindfulness. Now we come to the third foundation of mindfulness. Now you are practicing meditation and you try to be mindful of the breath or the movements of the abdomen. Then after some time your mind wanders and you are aware of it, and so you make notes as wandering. Now, you are doing contemplation of consciousness when you are noting your mind like that, wandering. Now, in order to understand consciousness as taught in Buddhism, you need to know Abhidhamma. According to Abhidhamma, there are two things that are called nama or mind. In Abhidhamma, nama is taught to be a combination of consciousness and mental factors. And is defined as the awareness of the object. It is a very simple awareness of the object, and not the awareness we use in our talk on vipassana meditation. So when we talk about vipassana meditation, we say we try to be aware of the object, and that awareness is actually a mindfulness. But here, consciousness, when we say consciousness is the awareness of the object, it is just a mere awareness of the object, not actually at that moment, not actually knowing whether it is white or black or whatever, but just the awareness of the object. It's a very simple awareness of the object, and that is called consciousness or citta in Pali, in Abhidhamma. And this awareness of the object or consciousness is always accompanied by mental factors. Now, there are many mental factors. Actually, there are 52 that accompany different types of consciousness. Now, attachment is a mental factor. Hate or anger is a mental factor. Delusion or ignorance is a mental factor. Jealousy is a mental factor. And on the good side, say confidence is a mental factor, mindfulness is mental factor, understanding is mental factor, metta, non-hate is mental factor. So there are many mental factors. Some are good mental factors, some are bad mental factors, and some are common to both good and bad. So the consciousness is always accompanied by some of these mental factors, and when the consciousness is accompanied by good mental factors, then we call that consciousness good consciousness or wholesome consciousness. When the consciousness is accompanied by bad mental factors, then it is called unwholesome consciousness, and so on. Although consciousness and mental factors arise at the same time, consciousness is said to be their leader. Consciousness is said to be the forerunner of these mental factors. Because when there is no consciousness, there can be no mental factors. No mental factors can arise when there is no consciousness. So consciousness is said to be their forerunner or leader. And this consciousness is always with us. So long as we are living, we are never without consciousness. Even when we are first asleep, in a deep sleep, there is still consciousness of some kind. So we can never be without consciousness as long as we are alive. So awareness of the consciousness or mindfulness of the consciousness is called contemplation on the consciousness, or the third foundation of mindfulness. So when a yogi makes effort and tries to be mindful of the consciousness, as his mindfulness becomes stronger and as he gets concentration, he begins to see the consciousness clearly and its characteristics and so on. So when he is seeing the consciousness, the true nature of consciousness, then he is said to be removing mental defilements regarding that consciousness. That means regarding that consciousness, he will not have attachment to the consciousness or anger to the consciousness. Last and fourth foundation of mindfulness is contemplation on the dhammas, or on the dhamma objects. Now, when we explain the discourses that are originally in Pali, and when we explain them in English, sometimes we have problems with the translation. Some words actually cannot be translated. One of such words is the word Dhamma. The word Dhamma has many meanings. It means differently in different places. So we cannot give just one meaning of the word Dhamma. Now when you say Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, I go to Dhamma for refuge, then Dhamma means what the Buddha realized, say when he became the Buddha, and also his teachings. Sometimes Dhamma means nature, sometimes it means learning, and so on. So there are many meanings of the word Dhamma, and so we cannot have just one English translation for the word Dhamma in all places. And here also the word Dhamma cannot be translated into English. Many translators translate it as mind object or mental objects. But I think that is not accurate. Mind object, because there are many things that are called Dhamma, and in this discourse, in the discourse on the four foundations of mindfulness, if you go to the section on the contemplation of the Dhamma, you will find that the 5 hindrances are called Dhamma, 5 aggregates of clinging are called Dhamma, and the 6 external bases and 6 internal bases are called Dhamma, 7 factors of enlightenment are called Dhamma, and the 4 noble truths are called Dhamma. So to cover all these, how can we translate the word Dhamma? Some of them are mental and some of them are material. So we cannot call them mental objects or mind objects. So it is better to leave it as it is and explain when we use the word Dhamma in a certain context. So here also we cannot translate this word into any language. So we say contemplation on the Dhamma in the Dhamma objects. So if we want to understand what Dhamma means here, we go to the section on the contemplation of the Dhamma, and there we find those mental hindrances and so on. So in this discourse, mental hindrances and others, there are altogether 5 groups. They are called Dhamma. Like the word Dhamma, the word Citta, which is translated here as consciousness, is another difficult word to translate. But here many authors translate the word Citta as consciousness. Now here also, for want of a better word, we have to use the word consciousness for Citta. But again, it is not accurate. Now, as you now know, we are with consciousness always. Even when we are asleep, we are with consciousness according to Abhidhamma. But people would say when you are in deep sleep, you are unconscious, or when you have fainted, you are unconscious. So this word also is not actually accurate for the word Citta in Pali, but we have to use some English word for this word, and so the word consciousness is used. So when we use the word consciousness, it is important that we define it. We tell people what we mean by the word consciousness. Just using the word consciousness will not be enough, because people may misunderstand. So here in Abhidhamma, the English word consciousness is used for the word Citta, because there is no other better word for the word Citta. Now, the objects represented by the word Dhamma are many, and the objects that are called Dhamma in this discourse overlap with the other objects of body contemplation, feeling contemplation, and consciousness contemplation. So suppose you are practicing meditation and somebody make a noise and you are angry. So how would you note? Angry, or anger. if you're making notes angry, I think you are doing the third foundation of mindfulness. Because I am angry means my mind is accompanied by anger. So it is very delicate. But when you are making notes as anger, you are doing the Dhamma object contemplation, or the fourth foundation of mindfulness. Because now you are taking anger, which is one of the mental hindrances, as the object of your attention. Although it is not important to to find out what contemplation you are doing at the moment, it is still good to know, say, what contemplation you are doing. But please do not try to find out what contemplation you are doing at the moment. It will take you away from the real practice of mindfulness and drag you into thinking. So sometimes it is difficult to say what contemplation we are doing, contemplation of consciousness or contemplation of the Dhamma objects. But whatever object it is, so long as you are mindful, then you are doing the practice of mindfulness meditation. So you don't have to find out what contemplation you are doing at the moment. Later on, you may think about it. Later on means after the practice of meditation. Okay, this is the 4 foundations of mindfulness in brief. So if you want to know more details, I must refer you to the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. But what we learn from this passage is that we must make effort. We must practice mindfulness so that we clearly comprehend or we clearly see the objects. That means we see the true nature of the objects. Only when we clearly comprehend the objects, only when we see the objects as impermanent, suffering, and non-soul, will we be able to prevent covetousness and grief from arising in our minds. So, in order to prevent them from arising in our minds, we need to comprehend the objects clearly, and in order to see the objects clearly, we need to practice mindfulness, and for the practice of mindfulness, we must make an effort. So, if we make effort and if we practice mindfulness, we will not fail to comprehend the objects clearly. So, when we comprehend the objects clearly, then we will be removing covetousness and grief at the same time. So let us all make effort to be mindful so as to comprehend the objects clearly and remove covetousness and grief in the world.